All right, it looks like I'm live. So, for anybody who's watching this in post, welcome to my 1.5 hour commentary pre debate. I have the debate pulled up right here from the Washington Post. I should get a secondary source actually, so I'll do that now. So, this is my first YouTube video that's going to be public. I want to do more commentary like things on here and educational videos about like diet, health, um, not like your typical self-help guru, but more like here's the facts. If you want to live this life, here you go type thing. A little bit about me. Um, I'm 20, gonna be 21 in November. I am very politically active. I have been since uh, as far back as really I can remember learning about it. It's always engaged me. I was heavy for Trump in the 2016 election, and one of the things that jumped out to me then was the animosity towards him. So I instantaneously knew that I had to figure out who this person was, and it always baffled me why everybody hated him so much. Um, well, I mean, I understood to some extent, and then as I understood more, I understood that it was media that was crafting a narrative that created most of the hatred towards him, which in turn created a lot of unnecessary division in our country that obviously we are dealing with the amalgamation of today. Um, so I had to deal with a lot of my teachers, like I'm sure a lot of people did, who were blatantly observing liberal views. Um, I wouldn't even call it liberal, to be honest, because liberal, the real liberal ideology is more of what the libertarians are today. And honestly, if you pick right or left, if you're a Republican or a Democrat, then you're wrong, in my opinion, because the division in this country is so bad that, and the people are so unable to talk to each other and have normal conversations that you can't pick one side. If you pick one side, you're going to be leaving out a lot on the other side. And something that I've always noticed is that on the left, they seem to have opinions, like half of them are correct opinions, and the other half are just radical opinions. Whereas the right holds kind of almost the other half of the correct opinions, but also holds a lot of jargon as well. And I understand that there is conservatism, which is slightly different than liberalism, but it's all bound up in this big rat's nest of ideology right now. And the two parties have been ruling our country for a long time. I believe the last time a non Republican or Democrat was voted into office was looks like Millard Fillmore, which was 1853. So every president since Millard Fillmore in 1853, 1850 to 1853, so he must have died in office, was the last president to not be affiliated with either the Republican or the Democratic Party. So since then, we have had a total death grip on our political system from either party. And in my opinion, they're both governed by elites, and there is no real representation on the people's behalf unless it absolutely has to be for whatever they're trying to get accomplished. And they need the votes for it. So Oh, yes, that was my secondary debate coverage. I'm currently trying to get up. See, I got Washington Post right now, so I guess C-SPAN. Let's see, Ned. Try C-SPAN. Get that up in the background and mute it just in case something happens. You never really know. Yep, that's just a trailer, so that's not going to do it. Try CNET. Or Verge. Open that one up too. I'm not endorsing any of these. By the way, I hate all media for the most part, except for independent media, which I believe is going to be taking over hopefully very soon, because I feel like people are going to be getting very sick and tired of the types of things that we were hearing from mainstream media. The fact that it's even called mainstream media just kind of solidifies it as what would you say, reliable or like truthful, just because it's mainstream, when in fact it is not at all. Most of it's complete lies and strung out into this fairy tale. Really, they twist the facts up like nothing I've ever seen, and honestly, it's sickening, and it only gets worse. So I would like to get this out there, though, that I'm not supporting Trump in like the sense of the word. Like, I'm not a true Trump supporter. I am a supporter of the bull in the ivory tower that is tearing everything down and pulling all the pot lids off of everything to show us exactly what's going on. Um, so I think this source will do fine. I don't really want to search and try to talk at the same time. But so I'm not a complete Trump supporter. He does say and do things that, like, he's not the ideal presidential candidate, yes, but he's the best that we have. He is um, better than anything that we've been given in a very long time. And he gets me excited about politics, about the wall, about actual solutions. Like, that was a concrete solution. He's like, okay, we have all of this illegal immigration coming in, bringing all these drugs into our country, and bringing in a lot of crime, whether in the form of actual criminals or in the drugs that they bring in, because that's empowering crime to begin with. Personally, I believe all drugs should be legalized. Like, you should have the ability to jump off a cliff if you so choose to, just as you should have the right to do heroin until you die. It is your body, it is your consciousness, and you should have control over what happens to that consciousness. So, oh, Andy, what's going on? So, this is my debate coverage, first podcast. I'm glad that you're able to join and talk. So, this is going to be about an hour and a half, and I'll be streaming the debate live on here. And not to worry, I won't be going into I won't be pausing the debate at all. I'm just going to let everything happen as it happens. But beforehand, I want to have some commentary about what's going on in the world and leading up to everything. So, like I was saying before, though, what Trump opposes is everything that's wrong with this country. The fact that this big stink was put up in the media over him rising in the polls and him rising in viewership. It's this media conglomerate that has held power in this country for the longest time. And they will strike down anybody with force who goes against anything that they say. It is a rise of Marxism and communism in this sickening relationship that's under the guise of compassion and under the guise of liberalism. They took the true liberalist form, which liberalism in its truest form is almost like I said, the libertarians are today. So It's about freedom, individual liberty, individual responsibility, and um, and rights and human rights, but not in the form that it was taken over to be today. So now you have our modern day liberals who are dragging the entire country left. So it makes anybody centrist or anybody right and makes them seem far right and radical when it is them, in fact, who are the radicals. Now, these liberals will play, these new age liberals, these far left identitarians, will play this game to where they will accuse you of being exactly what it is they are. So, for example, they are the racists, they are the fascists, they are the authoritarians that they are trying to fight. So, let me give you an example here. I'm not just going to blow smoke up your ass and throw opinions out into the water. So, for example, if I am a liberal identity politics character and I say that, let's see, that black people need reparations, or that black people specifically need income because they need infrastructure built in the neighborhoods that they live in. What you're telling me then is that they're not able to do what a white person can do, that they're not able to do what anybody else can do purely because of their skin color. And when you say that white people have privilege over black people purely because of their race, or that white people are inherently racist because of how they are, or that black people cannot be racist because of their skin, that is the racism. So I understand that far-right racism does exist. The KKK does exist. But it does not exist in the numbers that it used to exist in. So we don't have marches going down the streets. In my own town of Sanford, actually I live in Springvale, but it doesn't matter. There's an old picture of a KKK march, hundreds and hundreds of people marching down the street in full Klan gear, okay? If that was to happen today, I'm sure nobody in town would have anything to do with it. Nobody would put up with that. But the left would have you think that, or the far left, the left radicals would have you think that this is an epidemic in our country. Even people in our own CDC, the Center for Disease Control, have been telling us that the real pandemic is not COVID-19. It's not malaria. It's not anything that's actually killing people. It's not cancer. It's not obesity. What it is racism. That's the real epidemic. Yes, on your side, that is very true. So, like I said, they accuse you of being exactly what it is that they are. And next point, that was racism. Here's authoritarianism. So leftists will like to strike down any belief that you hold that they do not agree with. They will not debate with you. They will not have any conversation with you unless you agree on their fundamental assumptions that they're making. If you don't agree on those fundamental assumptions of a patriarchy and a oppressive America and an America that is inherently evil and corrupt at its core, then they cannot have a conversation with you. There's no convincing them otherwise that those are their inherent baseline beliefs that stem through the entire thing, which is an element of Marxism, which is to demoralize your patriotism and then remoralize yourself with this other system of this other, what would be the word, ideology. So Americanism and patriotism is out the window, but Marxism and communism gets brought in through this. So they will use this striking force to push you down and to try to demolish you in any form of debate, which they're not actually interested in having. So the purpose of a debate, and the right and the people who fall on the right and real liberals and libertarians will often meet at a middle ground, which is the purpose of a debate. It is, we are on two different sides. Let's try to find out where we can meet in the middle and where we can actually agree. Now, Liberals have been pulling people over into the left, into the far, far left, by refusing to do this. They say, nope, you're wrong, and we're not going to agree with anything you have to say. In fact, you're racist, you're fascist, you're authoritarian. And they are for laws against free speech, they're for gun control, which, here's an analogy on gun control, for example. So, if you ban guns, if you make all guns or all forms of guns illegal, which I understand is not the viewpoint of a lot of people who are for gun control, but let's just start here. So if you ban all guns, what about people who break the law anyway, who aren't interested in following your gun control law, who already hold guns as felons, which is against the law? The police are able to have guns, and if you're for gun control and for defunding the police, what about the police are going to have guns regardless? I mean, in the United Kingdom, I understand a lot of them don't. But if that's the state that you want, then sure. You know, when an officer shows up to stop a crime with a gun, they're not going to have any way to do anything about that, and you're putting officers' lives at risk. So, but people aren't going to follow that law if they already don't follow the law. And the people who do follow the law are going to be put in a disenfranchised position because of that, where they are now vulnerable to crime. They are now vulnerable to having their homes invaded with somebody who chooses not to follow that law. And even now, we have technology that can 3D print a gun. So all it takes is for one criminal to get his hands on a 3D printer and the availability to print those guns, and then just sell them like candy. And then all of a sudden you have an armed insurrection that you cannot stop. So with gun control, you're not going to be able to ban all the guns anyway. Even if you do, you're going to have a lot of Americans are going to fight back on you on that. There are a lot of Americans who believe solely in the Constitution. And I believe that our Constitution is yet to be fully treaded upon. We have a lot of people who stand up for the Constitution as it is, and they will not accept any kind of movement in any direction against it. So if you were to try to amend the Second Amendment, you would have a large swath of people who would immediately take massive issue with that. So we are about an hour away from the debate here. I just want to scroll through Trump's Twitter real quick and read a couple of the tweets off here. So, wow, I'm going to do the same thing to Biden as well. Wow, won't let poll watchers and security into Philadelphia voting places. There is only one reason why: corruption. Must have a fair election. So, this is something that's been going on a lot lately. I'm going to show you a video from Project Veritas about this that I'm sure most of you have already seen, where they've been finding absentee ballots in dumpsters, in ditches, and I'm sure a lot of them have been burned that we're not going to find. And in the grand scheme of things, mail-in voting, the absentee system, which is usually pretty solid, is broken. The Democrats are pushing for large-scale mail-in voting because they know that it is manipulatable, that they will have more of an ability to manipulate if they have to, and I'm sure they are already doing it. So, just arrived in the great state of Ohio. Real polls have us leading by even more than 2016. What he means by real polls is that a lot of the pollsters were wrong in 2016. First of all, Rasmussen, I believe, which was the most accurate poll, which I had been following. That was like the poll that I was following last election cycle. They have him, I believe, spell it wrong. Let's see. This is today. The Rasmussen Reports daily presidential tracking poll for Tuesday, sponsored by Whatfinger News, the best report alternative, so shows that 47% of likely U.S. voters approve of Donald Trump's job performance, 52% disapprove. The latest figures shit. The latest figures include 38% who strongly approve of the job Donald Trump is doing and 47% who strongly disapprove. This gives him a presidential approval index of -9. So, a lot of people are trying to hammer him on his coronavirus. Oh, look at that. See that? The approval for Obama is pretty much right on, actually. He seems to be netting pretty much above Obama's approval rating for the majority of his presidency. But a lot of people are ragging on him about his coronavirus response. 200,000 Americans dead. For one, America is a very densely populated area. Even if the virus is actually a real thing, which I'm not even quite sure that it is, or that they're the way that they're counting it is correct, because there have been people who have shot themselves, people who have died of cancer, who were battling cancer for a long time, who all of a sudden, coronavirus shows up on their test results when they die, and they are marked down as a corona death. The CDC even admitted that only 6% of the corona death count was actually from the virus specifically. So when this whole thing started, I had already known that a coronavirus is a virus like it's the flu, common cold, malaria, not malaria. What is it? I can't think of it right now. Anyway, it's a common type of respiratory disease. So when these kinds of things, sorry, I just got a text. So when this thing came out, I was like, okay, so it's a type of common cold type virus, and for one, people with cancer, people who are older in general, can die from getting a cold. People who have pre-existing conditions can die from getting a cold. So, if the majority of coronavirus deaths were being marked down as as a secondary cause of death, then what about the cold? And they stopped counting the flu deaths too. I think about a quarter of the way through the season. So they're just lumping it all in with the corona. There's so much lying. There's so much deception that is going on that it makes me impossible to believe. That it makes it impossible for me to believe that this is as bad or happening in the way that they are trying to tell us that it is happening in. So, for one, we are an hour and 6 minutes away from the debate. I am just checking a couple of things. Don't mind me, I'm just going to load up so you're going to hear a little bit of an echo right here. I'm just checking the stream quality. For one. And I'm sure a lot of them have been burned that we're not going to find. And in the grand scheme of things, mail-in voting, the absentee system, which is usually pretty solid, is okay. So everything's going fine. I'm gonna scroll through a couple more tweets on Trump's Twitter here. Does it shock anybody that poll watchers are being blocked and kicked out of voting locations in Philly? We are in court right now. This corruption must end. So I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to be videotaping and doing undercover reporting, such as people like Project Veritas during this election. And even last election, Project Veritas did some stuff about this, where he was able to go in and proclaim that he was Marshall Mathers, who, for anybody who doesn't know, that's the real name of like Eminem or whatever, and was able to vote. And it was only until he had said something that directly tipped them off, but they were all ready to do it. But he was like, "Are you sure you're gonna let me do this? You're sure you're gonna let me do this? I don't have my ID or anything." And then somebody looked it up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's all good. You're Marshall Mathers, right? Like you live on this street, or you're the other one." He's like, And I think he tried to say that he was the famous Marshall Mathers, but I'm not 100% sure. In the end, he decided to walk away and did not commit a felony, which they were completely, utterly ready to let him do. So, let's see. I'm going to go through a couple of Joe Biden's tweets. So, a thing about Joe Biden Oh, Jesus. I was just about to talk about this. So, Joe Biden refused to allow an earpiece check and a drug test, which Trump offered to do if Joe Biden had done it. And Joe Biden never said anything. There are sources that say that his team just flat out denied. But there is no reason, in my opinion, that they shouldn't have said yes to this, because you would have put the ball in Trump's court. If Trump, under your media and your assumptions, is accused of using performance enhancers and amphetamine-like substances, then why not agree? And then get a doctor's note. If you wind up testing positive for anything, say, I have a doctor's note, I have to be taking these medications. That's just, people take medications. And if that wound up being the case, then you make him look bad and you put the ball in his court. And if he's actually doing any kind of amphetamine-like substances or any kind of uppers that are going to show up on this test, then boom, you got him. Got him. You know, he's been pulling your chain for so long. There is no legitimate reason for you not to consent to a drug test and a earpiece check if you're not using either of them. So, said, folks, the big night is here. Tune in. He doesn't say this either. All of these tweets, you can obviously tell this is not how Biden talks. This is his team crafting together tweets for him. At least Trump actually is pressing buttons on his phone to make his own tweets, whereas Biden has a team of people at a table getting together and talking multiple times a day to say, okay, how are we gonna word this tweet? How are we gonna do this, guys? What are the pros and cons of using this word? How are we gonna target more voters? How are we gonna get Donald Trump's black voter turnout to go lower and ours to increase? So, if we're elected, Kamala Harris and I will wake up every single morning to fight for the middle class, for Main Street, for the folks who keep our country running. We're going to make our government work for everybody, not just the wealthy and well-connected. Okay. How come you didn't do that during the Obama administration when you were vice president? You did not fight for the middle class. You fought to put higher taxes on us, higher fees. You put fees on us if we did not agree to have private insurance. If you're healthy, there's no reason for you to have insurance. The fact that Obama had this giant Obamacare system, the pockets were filled by the drug companies and by the pharmaceutical insurance industries. So they were very happy about what Obama did, basically forcing everybody to have this. But it started the whole healthcare, Medicaid, Medicare system, that healthcare is a human right. I will tell you this. Healthcare is not a human right. You know what a human right is? A human right is well defined in the Constitution. The right to pursue happiness and to have freedom and liberty, okay? The Second Amendment falls under that. The First Amendment falls under that. Those are rights. They have the right to pursue these things. They have the right to have freedom and liberty. So, the right to private property, all of this. So, the right to health insurance is taking away from my right is taking away from my fundamental rights. Okay, so if you feel like you have the right to health insurance, you don't, because the right to be unhealthy and to have to repetitively visit the doctor's office on my expense, the right to be a cocaine addict and have to go to the doctors all the time, or like a heroin addict and I have to pay for your Narcan, or to be obese and I have to pay for your diabetes medication because you put yourself into that position, and I have to pay for that as a healthy person? I don't think so. That is not a right. You have right to do whatever you want with your life, to be unhealthy, to do whatever. And I understand that if you're born with like fibromyalgia or some kind of neurodegenerative disorder and you have nothing to do with that, sure, I will gladly front my tax dollars for you to have that treatment, right? I will gladly put my tax dollars forward to have children with cancer, their lives prolonged as far as possible, okay? But I'm not going to put my tax dollars on the table for somebody who's going to abuse themselves, and then I have to pay for the consequences of that. That is fundamentally un-American. If you're going to jump off a cliff you're going to pay the consequences of when you hit the ground. I am not going to. So, fundamentally, healthcare is not a human right, okay? And they will try to push that down your throat because it's a good sob story. It makes you feel good. Be like, yeah, you know what? We should take care of everybody. Well, you know what? Our taxes are already so high. Most people can't. Most people are. I mean, really, if the taxes weren't there, it wouldn't be making too much of a difference. 30%'s not a whole lot in the grand scheme of things, but it's a third, okay? And people are already struggling to put food on the tables for their families and to live normal lives without having a boot in their throat. You cannot raise a child in this world in the same way that you should be able to. To have two parents, one of them's going to have to work full time, and that's if they make a good living. Most of the time, to raise one child, both parents are going to have to work full time. That child's going to have to be in daycare. They're going to have to be in school, so you're not really going to get like any time to visit with your child. You might get like 2 hours if you're lucky in the morning and then before you go to bed. So you're not really raising that child at all. And that is fundamentally an American disaster. So let's see. Recently, this is breaking news actually. Ilhan Omar has been linked with ballot harvesting, illegal ballot harvesting. Apparently, it is federal law, that you can only have 3 ballots brought to by any one person. And these people have been going around paying people to fill out ballots, supposedly for Ilhan Omar and for Biden, and then tossing the ones that are for Trump and still filling those out. So let me give you an example of this. So ballot harvesting, if I have an intention in mind, is like going to an apartment building, for example, knocking on the first door and saying, "Hi, have you gotten your mail-in ballot?" And they're like, "Oh, yes, I have. I have like 5 of them." And you're like, "Okay, who do you plan on voting for? I will take that ballot for you and bring it to wherever it needs to go and make sure that it gets brought there. And I'm being paid to do this, so you can trust me." And they're like, "Oh, okay, sounds great. It's a lot easier for me. Let me fill it out for you." And they're like, "All right, here you go. I'll pay you for this." And then they get a Biden one. They put that right in their car. They put it in a safe and they lock it. Okay? And then they knock on the next door. And they're like, "All right, here you go." They look at the name, Trump. All right, throw it right out the window. You can see the problem with this. And why ballot harvesting, it should be illegal. But Democrats will push for it. They will push for all sorts of corruptible, manipulatable tactics. Okay? And it's sickening. The direction that this country is going, and the fact that Americans aren't standing up for it, is really sickening. So here's a great one. You deserve a president who tells you the truth. All right? Watch this. You see this head nod, that head shake at the end there? Donald Trump shaking his head? That looks like the head shake of somebody who is accused of a lie and who is not guilty of said lie and is shaking his head in disbelief. Like, what is wrong with you? That's what that looks like. And I think that they're saying that because they're planning on lying to Trump about Trump in the debate, and Trump's gonna make that face. So it's subtle psychological connections. And the leftists love this kind of garbage because, you know what? They're in the pockets with corporations, and corporations have been doing manipulative advertisement for a long time. So they know exactly how to do it. It's grassroots donors like you who power our campaign, and I'm counting on you to help us meet our end of quarter fundraising goal. If you're able, please chip in before tomorrow night's big deadline. So, grassroots donors like you who power our campaign. You mean, so you're Biden's donors, a lot of Biden's financial backers actually bailed out. And here's another crazy story, actually, before I get into that. Bailing out of the protesters and rioters is, let's see, what was the specifics of this? So, I forget what it was, but okay, so Biden's grassroots donations, a lot of them are set up in the way that I believe it was like It was retirees. So Biden apparently has more retirees than Trump does by like 20, 30 times, okay? And that's really weird because retirees don't really have money to spend on a political campaign or anything. If you're campaigning, you're working for a charity or something, and you go to an elderly retiree and no matter what kind of sob story you spin them, they're going to be like, sorry, I have to talk to the wife. I don't know. I can't spare it. Because most people who go to retire, they've seen the impacts of inflation their entire lives, and they can barely afford a vehicle with the massive amount that they've put away. And that's, most people don't have a massive amount, but even if it was a massive amount, the inflation over time, the rising prices will drown out their money in the end. So they don't have much to spare. And you can talk to any campaigner for a charity, they will tell you that retirees don't even knock on their doors. They're not gonna give you anything. But apparently, you can get money for Biden. So, and the numbers are just so crazy when compared to Trump. It's obvious that to go over your $1,200 of political donation, you're going to have to donate under another name. And they obviously had some kind of, they just put too many retirees in for that, and that inflated the numbers in an odd way. And they were caught. So, and the Democrats have been getting caught with a lot of stuff like this all year, really. So, the cat's out of the bag. It's been out of the bag, and it's been scratching people up, and people are just they don't even pay attention. So the media is worse than it's been, and worse than it was in 2016. Antifa is actually out rioting and burning things down, and Black Lives Matter is not even. It's not anything like it's supposed to be. It's not anything like it's advertised to be. It has no leader. It's just like Antifa, which allows all sorts of radicalists to adopt the symbolism and to parade around, and underneath that logo, underneath that guise. Like, I could go and, throw a Molotov cocktail through the window of my mayor today, and with a Black Lives Matter t-shirt on, and I would suddenly be a Black Lives Matter supporter doing that. So, like, the fact that they have no leadership, they have no system that keeps their cult together, then it's just that. It's a cult that has no initiation system. It's just anybody who puts on the name can be. So, I was getting a drink of water. So we are 50 minutes away from the greatest debate in American history. So I'm going to show you now the ballot harvesting videos the Project Veritas has released. So here we go.
James O'Keefe here in downtown Minneapolis at the scene of the crime. The person you're about to meet, Liban Mohammed, aka King Liban 1, boasts about the hundreds of absentee ballots in his car. This video is one of the first of its kind. A man self-incriminating himself, bragging about all the illegal ballot harvesting that he does.
Money is everything. Money is the key in this world. If you ain't got money, you should not be here, period. You know what I'm saying? Lacag is everything. Campaign lacag baa wata. $200 iyo $100 oo waxa la iyada iyo awowga iyo aska soo qaadeen. You cannot campaign that. You gotta have an investment to campaign. You gotta have a fundraisers. You gotta have waxa la yiraahdo. You gotta have the whole team. Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. Wajida gaariyaygu waa buuxa. Waxaas waa absent ballot salka yaala. Soo ma jeedin. Fiiri. Waxaas oo dhan soo ma jeedin. Waa buuxa gaariyaygu. Waa buuxa yaala. Waxaas kullu waa Jamaal Cusmaan way. Fiiri. 300 keliya maanta soo dhacday oo Jamaal Cusmaan ya ciidamada hogaaminaysa aamino maxaad leedahay waa lagu kala baxay Soomaa meesha aad weyn waa generaalada ciidamada hogaaminaysa weeye sida ay la socotaan ya ilaahay haata shaqadu waa socotaa adeer saak 6 baan bilownay ilaahay haatan waa wadnaa waa noo jeedaa saacadana waa u jeedaan waa ay horeysa saacadayda oo bixinay 2 in the morning still hustling 2 in the morning still hustling.
I think he was both Ilhan Omar and Jamal, but I think he was more with Ilhan Omar. My name is Omar, O-M-A-R, Jamal, J-A-M-A-L. I'm right now part of the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office, but also I'm the chair of the Somali Watchdog Group, and I have been involved in the community for the last 20 years.
Omar Jamal is the latest brave Project Veritas insider to come forward and expose a voter fraud scheme in Minnesota that will shock you.
Well, I want to be part of this investigation because of ongoing election fraud that we feel that we should bring to the attention of everyone. Therefore, chances are we can do something about it.
When we spoke with Omar Jamal, he actually repeated our PV insider motto, be brave.
Do something about it.
Omar Jamal secretly recorded conversations with the players involved in the voter fraud scheme to expose the criminal behavior he says is victimizing his own community and the integrity of the election process.
Liban didn't get it in a unique way. He just get them the way that everybody before him or maybe even after him will do, which is go to the elders, probably maybe pay them and collect, help, to their men. He's helping them. So I think that's the process of collecting from the seniors from their buildings.
There was video, you can see the video, there was a video out and about that he has the ballots in his car.
Right.
And talking about the only way you can win is with money.
She uses money, and he's one of many people. He's not the only one who works for her. He was talking to his opponents and other people saying that, here we are. He was just boosting,
He said, I have 300, and he had them in his hand. Got it right here.
Like a cash. Like cash. So question, have you ever asked yourself, how did he get them?
Yeah, how did he get them?
You just don't go and, I was looking at them, and they were not filled. They were blank.
Right, some were open.
Yeah. In the envelope still.
Who was the one filling out the absentee ballots for you?
People who work with Ilhan Omar and other candidates who work for them. Ilhan has a handful of people that work for her. They came to us to our apartments. And they tell us that this year you're going to vote for Ilhan. You don't go nowhere, you stay home. We will go fill out for your absentee ballot. When it comes, we'll come and get it. You just don't go nowhere, you stay here. They fill it for us. And then they do it, but by themselves.
Where do they pay the money?
The minute we sign the thing, the election, that's what you can pay.
I think the purpose of collecting the ballots is to make sure that you fill them out and you make sure that the person you want get in there.
Wow.
They fight you if you speak up.
Wow.
What can I do? Get jumped? Hell no. I ain't going. No, I'm good.
Okay, let me talk to you.
Yeah. And I got money too, so if I gotta get them out to the polls, I'll get them to the polls.
Okay.
Just don't forget me. I need some money. It's all over, bro.
I got you. Listen.
Got me?
Listen. I'm gonna hook you up with $2.
All right.
I'm working with Jamal Osman. Jamal Osman is running the city council in Minneapolis.
Right.
That's my young brother.
Videos saying that the only way to win is money. And what was the other one? He said it was money.
Our source inside the Somali community explains that as soon as early voting occurs, that's when ballot harvesting of the elderly happens. And one of the places it happens is at Cedar Riverside Apartments here in Minneapolis.
At the end of this street,
Yes.
there's 3 towers called Phone Towers.
Okay.
And it's all seniors, and they took every ballot.
Every ballot. They just take
Every
them from
single
them.
ballot. They knock on the door and say, your ballots come, give it to me, give it to me.
They don't even pay them for it. They just take it.
No. And the ones that didn't vote on ballots, the young people and the women and stuff, they were paying cash. They were getting bags of money the last 1 week here to drive people. And when you vote and they mark you off, then you get in the van, they give you a cash.
lacagta waxaa keenay Ali Gani.
The money was brought by Ali Gani. Ali Gani is the campaign chair of Ilhan. He's a staffer in her office.
Ali
Gani
Guinea.
was coordinating everything.
Ali Issa, who's deputy director for Ilhan Omar here in Minneapolis, is part of people who are using cash to get votes and use that to make sure that he wins the election. He's very active in the community and making sure that whatever it takes to get her elected by any means necessary.
Based upon our undercover reporting, U.S. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, also affectionately known as a member of the Squad, and her campaign may be behind one of the biggest voter fraud schemes in American history. But this time, we have it on tape.
The person who's working in Ilhan's campaign is the one who's managing the voting place. They bring them, they line them, they put the open ballots in there, and then they take them in and say, here. And the people mark. How's that working? They have perfected this system. This is what they do. They will tell you, we are applying for your ballot. They take a picture of your social security and your driver's license. They have a database. When the ballot comes, they track it. Sometimes they make fake emails. They track the ballot. Then they come and pick up the ballot.
Wow. So they
Unopened.
actually. Wow.
So there's a vested interest, but we are victims of the system. They don't give a shit about any Somali issue. Sorry to use my language.
No, you're right.
And
Right.
the DFL wants to win this state at all costs. It's a mutually beneficial, and the victims is the Somali.
We have to understand that the immigrants, mostly here now, are first generation immigrants. They are still, most of them are still emotionally connected to where they came from. And because of their background, not knowing how elections work, they came from a military government. That's the only system that they know. And when they get here, because of their ignorance, not knowing how all things work, sometimes they even think it's legal.
Now, our sources say that Ilhan Omar is actually exploiting members of her own Somali community in Ward 6, which is the epicenter of where these alleged voter fraud activities take place.
It's not right that there's, corruption. It's pretty much an alliance between clans and the progressive left in the city of Minneapolis. Because you have a specific family, which Abdi Wassameh, Mahmoud Noor, Ilhan, Jamal Usman, who just got re-elected, or should I say elected for City Ward 6, all are in the same cousin of family. Like it's clan-oriented.
Liban Mohammed's video shows him violating Minnesota election laws, which prohibit someone from collecting more than 3 ballots.
It's also a violation of federal law. For anyone who votes for others illegally, this is the law. 52 U.S.C. 10307, punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine.
Numbers don't lie. Numbers don't lie. Waujeedan gaarigaygu waa buuxaa. Waxaas waa absent ballot salka yaala. Soo ma jeedin. Fiiri. Waxaas oo dhan soo ma jeedin. Waa buuxaa gaarigayga. Waa buuxa yaala. Waxaas kullu waa Jamal Usman way. Fiiri. 300 clear maanta soo dhacday oo Jamal Usman. Yeah.
There was video. You can see the video. There was a video out and about that he has the ballots in his car.
Right.
And talking about the only way you can win is with money. So he's basically saying that.
Admitting that.
Right.
Yeah, admitted that. So
I saw that video.
yeah,
He took it down.
But you captured it.
you saw the video?
I saw the video. And he took it down, but I captured it.
Get out of here.
What?
Did you really see the video?
I captured the video. Captured that video. It's a beautiful video.
I told you. Things like that though. That's what's going on.
He said, I have 300, and he had them in his hand. Got it right here.
Like a cash. Like cash.
Like-
So, question: have you ever asked yourself how did he get them?
Yeah, how did he get them?
You just don't go and like I was looking at them and they were not filled. They were blank.
Right. Some were open.
Yeah. In an envelope still.
It's an open secret. It's not something that she will do anything that she can to get elected, and she has hundreds of people on the streets doing that.
Our sources say that Ilhan Omar's voter fraud machine appears to be much more than just a few.
Which is really true. Democrats will do pretty much anything to get elected. Pretty much any kind of politician today will do pretty much anything to get elected. It's just how it is. When you get elected, you are now in a position of you're at a junction where you can decide what traffic goes through to some extent. And that is a very valuable position in the eyes of corporations, in the eyes of people who would like to abuse that power. It is also valuable in the eyes of the people, but to this day, we have not seen that value actually being looked at like it should be.
Foot soldiers like Liban Mohammed's ballot harvesting, this appears to be an effort that is very systemic and very coordinated.
Hundreds of people have come that do not live here. And then they're saying that it's only 30 days they have to live here. These people are collecting benefits elsewhere, housing elsewhere, living in other places. And the DFL knows everything. They just want the numbers. Truck drivers are coming, getting temporary addresses. There needs to be a database of where are these people coming from. They don't live in Minnesota. We don't have hundreds of Somalis lining up every day for balloting.
No.
Where are they coming from? And as soon as this election is done, the people will go back to their normal lives.
It doesn't matter. It's over.
It's over. They're accepting temporary addresses. They're accepting all kind of shenanigans. People are showing an ID. I moved 30 days ago. My ID is not come back. Okay, just give us the last 4 of your social and tell us the address. And then somebody else will say, yeah, the same people who are helping them vote are saying, yeah, I can vouch for this
That's
address.
it. The vouch thing. I saw that. They're vouching now.
Or they can have someone vouch for them that lives in the same ward and precinct.
That's what I'm talking about, the person vouching for them. Now, where do I find out who vouched for these people, these 8 people that live in one house?
You know that those people were vouched for.
There's no way 8 people live in that one house. That's a little tiny house.
It's not only her, it's all this, DFL machine. No, this is a DFL machine that's, in full operation in the state of Minnesota. And if you don't do it the way that you need to do it, then you just better get the hell out of the state.
Now you may ask yourself, how is voter fraud of this scale, of this magnitude, how does this voter fraud go unchecked?
So there you go. So that's the type of beautiful thing that's going on. And I find that interesting. And the Republican Party is just sleeping on that.
Why didn't they do anything about that video?
They can't, because that video, here's what's going on with the video, right? The video basically doesn't, how do you say this? Does he say at any time in the video that he aligns himself with Jamal Usman?
Yeah.
He does?
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's gone now.
So if that video at any given time does say he does align with Jamal Usman, and then the state can do something about that.
It's not right that there's, corruption. It's pretty much an alliance between clans and the progressive left in the city of Minneapolis.
Well, I'm afraid if it's already too big to stop, maybe it's too late. Maybe it's already too big to stop. There's a lot of people invested in this, and they don't care how they did it. We win, and that's it. If American people don't pay attention to what's happening, the country will collapse. The rules and regulations, if you ignore that and you let corruption and fraud become a daily business, and then tough luck, the country will not exist as they know it.
Now the only question is, what does Congressman Ilhan Omar have to say for herself? That her deputy, Ali Issei, is apparently a central figure in all this fraud. So the question is, what does the Attorney General of Minnesota have to say about this? What is the county attorney here in Minneapolis? What is he going to do about this? And finally, what does the Attorney General of the United States, William Barr, intend to do about this massive criminal voter fraud caught irrefutably on videotape? Oh, and we're not done.
The answer is they're not going to do much of anything. They're going to dance around this, and nothing's really going to change. People are going to bicker on the right and bicker on the left, and they're all going to argue different facts, and then life will continue on as it always did. And I'm sure mail-in voting will happen, and I'm sure that there is going to be a massive amount of later revealed corruption that will probably shake things up for the next election. Hopefully Donald Trump will still manage to win.
Stay tuned for part 2.
There you have it, James O'Keefe in a leather jacket and some kind of 80s. We gotta play that again. Watch this. Oh jeez. I think you couldn't have been more cringy there, really, James. So, see if Trump's tweeted anything since. Sure he has. No, hasn't. Probably some kind of debate prep. I'm sure he will tweet something before he gets up on the stage. But Biden still thinks it's a good idea to be tweeting right now. This election is Scranton versus Park Avenue. Jesus Christ, you are not Scranton, Biden. God damn. So, should I play the part 2 for... Well, actually, might as well show the video proof. I will give it a little bit more. I'm going to check the... Okay, they have the coverage up on the Washington Post here. See what they're talking about.
Showed times where he showed some aggressiveness and assertiveness in his answering. So I'm definitely going to be looking at that, and I think that will also perhaps tell voters too what these two men think about their own campaigns right now. Are they confident in how they're performing? Are they confident that they are appealing to the American voter?
So one thing I could tell you is, Jesus, I forgot what I was just about to say. Oh yes, I just lost it again. Maybe I'll think of it while we play the part 2 for this, shall we?
James O'Keefe back here on the ground in Minneapolis. Our undercover journalists at Project Veritas have just exposed a voter fraud ring so widespread that many members of the Somali community here consider it an open secret. Many believe if this corruption continues, there'll be no more free elections, and our sources inside the Somali community here allege that the architect of this pay-for-vote scheme is none other than U.S. Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Your focus is winning, no matter what you do. You ignore the rules and regulations. There's no moral and ethics here. It's just the end will justify the means.
Project Veritas has received an explosive piece of tape. The tape you're about to see shows a man buying a registration form for an absentee ballot from a voter, giving him, quote, pocket money, unquote, of $200 and expecting to collect his ballot when the voter receives it. In this next tape, we hear from another ballot harvester who tells us how much money he receives for his illegal activities. Activities he says he doesn't care are illegal.
meeqa lacag ku baxday kultaan
ya
qiyaastii meeqa ka baxday lacag ilhaan iyo groupkan
lacag badan ka baxday had lacag la sii waana qodob
ama jalsi meeqa la sii
sidee ma
waa vodka qaali miyaade
$800
Omar Jamal is the latest Project Veritas insider. He secretly recorded dozens of conversations in and around the Somali community in Minneapolis to expose a rampant voter fraud scheme.
I think Ilhan Omar is one of the people who are behind all this mess, and they have a lot of people that work for them that make sure that tasks get carried out, ballots collected, there's the cash money exchanging hands. It's an open secret that everybody knows it, but they don't talk about it.
Will they do it again for the next election, general election?
Yeah, November. Yeah, November is actually they're gearing up for November. Yes, 80,000 of immigrants' votes will swing this election to one side, and then they became very important. They became the focus of this, and millions of dollars are spent to make sure that these 80 or 100,000 of immigrant votes go one way. So it will make a difference.
It's
expensive, why?
And how very expensive.
How many?
40 people.
40 people. This election now, they'll spend millions of dollars. It costs a lot. It's huge money. How much? 200, 300.
$200 to $300 is the compensation?
Yeah. Some of the techniques that he uses is to exchange money for vote, and that's not a secret. It's open and everybody knows about it.
She's the one who came up with all this. The community, she's the one, somehow. Nobody knew about, this is something like new within her.
So she did it. She started this whole thing with the pay to vote.
Yeah.
Through our undercover reporting, we have discovered yet another person who claims he was paid hundreds of dollars in a pay-to-vote election fraud ring. His name is Osman Ali Dakwan, and he alleges both Ilhan Omar and possibly even her opponent in the last primary each tried to game the system in a pay-to-win scenario.
Where is the money coming from?
Election kusoo baxay. Oo la doortay. Lacag leeman.
Ayaga ugu lacag badnaa.
Ninka madowga ugu lacag badnaa. لكن أصير العيد أنت لقى قاتل إلهام لو وصل بس أنا كده
To be paying people out like this on this kind of scale has to require at least tens of millions of dollars. If you're planning on swinging the entire 80 to 100,000 Somalis in this election with ballot harvesting, you not only have to pay those people, and let's just say they're getting paid $800 a piece, or that $800 is getting allocated to go to these people a piece. And then let's say that the people who get paid to go around and harvest the ballots, the ones actually assuming the risk. So I'd assume that they'd have at least that amount of money. Well, let's just say that it's $1,000 per person. If they're allocating that amount of money, that's about $100 million. And that's that's lowballing it. So it's at least tens of millions to $100 million plus dollars for this kind of this scale of voter fraud.
إلى العقم بحنيسين. إلى العقم بحنيسين.
لكن ما غلطان بحنيسين.
جمال عثمان or city council.
Yes.
The more election you win, the more powerful you will become. The more fundraising, the money you will get. The more money you get, the more you can buy people. It's all tied together.
Take money.
But that's illegal, why?
We don't care illegal. أنا ما أفكر أو illegal سمعنا. أنا اللي كان عضية. أنا اللي عضية.
Your focus is winning, no matter what you do. You ignore the rules and regulations. There's no moral and ethics here. It's just the end will justify the means.
Osman clearly has a blatant disregard for the American political process, doesn't fear the illegalities of his actions, so much so that he casually mentions having to pay off al-Shabaab, aka Al-Qaeda, to open a business back home in Mogadishu.
That's a lot of money. That's a lot of
money. Aku codsanaya laysanka aan ku haysto in xagga la iga siiyo. Saarda ma ku. Very expensive $2,000. Waa bas. Waraaqdii shaabadaysan sugaya. Haddana al-Shabaab ay siyaareen. al-Shabaab kuna iga rabaa.
Osman Ali says even the election judges are in on it.
Marka election judges waqtigooda waa la siiyaa.
Yes.
Marka judges ka la siinaa lacagta.
Judges ka ayaga waxa kala diray ayaga corruption.
Election judges.
Ilhan's people count the ballots?
Everything. So the people who are actually sitting, working, are the same people. They shouldn't have those same people doing all the job.
So the people that work for Ilhan are actually counting the ballots, counting the vote.
And they become a manager in the precinct too.
And manage the precinct.
Yes. Progressives, yes.
So they do all of it.
They do all of it. They do it all. They do all of it.
Well, not only Somali community, American people, it looks like if they're interested in continuation of the institution of this country, if they're interested in keeping this country intact, I think one of the things to do is to make sure that people at least live up to the basic tenets of the constitution of this country. You know, basic rules of morals and ethics. If you ignore that, then soon the house is going to collapse. You know, if you don't do that, then there's nothing else left.
Even Osman, who is profiting from the pay-to-vote scheme, is able to reconcile with the simple fact that if criminals aren't arrested and held accountable for their wrongdoings, they'll never stop because they have no reason to fear.
Why?
You continue to this year, I'm a city of Minneapolis, they're corrupt.
ما بقايا معي
إلا الحيرة ضد ما بقايا
يا
إلا ضد الحيرة والو أديو والو مدعي يعني ولا حتى أنا بس أنا داري trouble
big one
big scope هذا trouble big trouble هذا.
So this guy just said that they're not afraid. They're not going to be afraid until the first person gets arrested, and the forget which department it was, but there was just a investigation launched. So hopefully they are very scared right now, and hopefully they're not. Hopefully they're going to be caught and going to be caught swiftly, and justice will be applied at its maximum capacity.
Osman isn't the only person we found during our investigation who admits to being paid. But not all were as enthusiastic about their involvement in the pay-for-vote scheme.
Ilhan has a handful of people that work for her. They came to us to our apartments. And they tell us that this year you're going to vote for Ilhan.
Do you know if they come directly from Ilhan Omar's campaign?
Yes, because the T-shirts, they're not hiding.
Do they let people know that they're with Ilhan's campaign when they're...
People obviously know.
They all know?
Everybody knows. Everybody knows in the community.
As you've heard from our sources, some in the Somali community feel strong-armed and imposed upon Ilhan's crew. Beyond the alleged confiscation of absentee ballots, we've also heard they may go as far as voting for them at the polling station.
They will make sure that you vote, and then when it's that on the way back right home, you can give me the money in the car.
How do they make sure you voted for Ilhan Omar?
They help us because the voting booth, they allow interpreter.
At the voting booth, they allow them to help you vote.
Yeah.
So they walk up to the booth with you
Yeah.
and they vote with you.
Yeah.
عادة maadaama luqadda aan garanaynin wayna la galaan gudaha
They go inside with us, and they help us, and they actually do that inside there.
So inside the booth, the person goes in and actually votes for you.
Yeah.
Does,
Boothki kula galayaan oo u buuxinayaan. Yes.
so you never even get a chance to vote. Does he never really votes? It's the other person.
Marka iyaga vote gareeya.
iyaga naga caawiyo iyaga meesha
Yeah, they actually the ones who vote. People don't usually. Yeah. They do the voting.
They're standing outside. Jamal Usman's team and other teams are standing there. They walk with you to the booth, and then they vote. Oh, vote this guy. Vote this guy. Vote this guy. Vote even if you speak English.
Wow. So how do they get away with it at the voting center? Why does nobody complain at the voting center that you're letting these people do this? Everybody just lets you go.
Federal law says anyone who votes for others is violating 52 U.S.C. 10307, punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a $10,000 fine.
So if you can't even speak English, the language of the country that you're trying to vote in and sway the election for, yet an interpreter can come in and basically put the hand on the button for you, and even you wouldn't have any idea if they were lying to you flat out and just voting for the opposite person, because you don't speak the language. You're definitely not going to be able to read it, and who's to say that they're being honest with you? Like, one interpreter could easily spend his entire day at a voting station, just bringing people in who doesn't speak English, say, hey, we're going to go vote, I'm going to help you vote, and then not tell you that I'm actually going to vote for the same person all day long. So
The law is clear. Buying votes is illegal.
Spent over $250,000 in this election. Wow. That kind of crazy.
Just handing it out. They got that much cash. Jumping out.
This is a big business because look, this girl's gonna propose how to end the money to Israel. Ali Ghani and the owner of the mall and Ilhan's campaign, the cash was coming from this guy because the money was being paid here in the mall.
He's Palestinian.
Yeah. He's financing this whole thing. The reason she's fighting for Palestine is because of this guy.
And that's it.
Yeah.
He's pulling the strings.
Yeah. So it's all about money and power. And they want her to defund the Israel money.
That's all this is about.
That's what that's about.
I hope the state, the governor, and the attorney general will take this issue very serious. Now we know it's out there. Now we know it's public. And I hope they will investigate and look into this in a very serious way. And I also hope that the U.S. attorney, the federal level, and even the FBI might come and look into this, because this, cannot continue the way it is. It's simply wrong and illegal.
If the strong-arming tactics of Ilhan's crew prove to be true, it is a complete violation of basic human rights. From our reporting in the field, the community seems to be fully aware that Ilhan Omar's campaign is connected to a voter fraud ring that operates with impunity. So this raises questions. Why hasn't the Attorney General Keith Ellison looked into this? Is the head of the DFL, Ken Martin, turning a blind eye to this blatant corruption? Does Ilhan Omar yield this much power? If so, why? Should we be worried that unknown powerful people hold leverage over her?
So there you have it. I had to take a quick break for the last 30 seconds of that. I had to go to the bathroom real quick, but this is just how bad and how blatant our voter fraud is right now. You heard them say that this was an open secret, something that a lot of people knew about, that knew this was happening. But yet it took up to this point less than a month and a half away from this election. So hopefully something is done about this. Hopefully something is done about the massive issue that is voter fraud in our country, and that this election continues to be. Actually, I can't even say continues to be. Hopefully, this election is fair and doesn't go down in history as the most corrupt, manipulated election ever. Just give me one moment. I gotta get some secondary stuff up. So we are now less than 15 minutes away from the greatest debate in American history. I have a couple of things that I actually wanted to talk about today, and I haven't gotten to it, and we're 15 minutes away. So let me pull up what I wanted to speak about today. Actually, so these are the topics that I would like discussed at the debate: education, health, entrepreneurship, the economy in general. I don't want to see a lot of these GDP figures, a lot of these fake talking points that even Trump falls victim to portraying. So here's the thing with education. Our public education system in this country, we don't teach philosophy. We don't teach kids the ways that there are, the ways that exist in this world to live. We don't teach them belief systems. We don't teach them that they can we don't teach them about Western philosophy, don't teach them about Eastern philosophy. They have to kind of exist in this turbulent realm on their own, and what you get is what we have, which is all of these kids not having any kind of belief system. Just it's teenage angst upon teenage angst, and it's like a toilet bowl just flushing down of this nihilism, hopelessness, this angst that just amalgamates and produces the kinds of kids that we have today. Weak, fragile, frail. They all push each other into this realm. They keep pushing each other, and the word that I'm thinking of is it's all symbiotic. So they don't teach kids about the value of hard work and grit. Physical education is a joke. Our children are becoming increasingly careless, nihilistic, disillusioned, weak, fragile, and without purpose. They don't teach about health and the importance of staying healthy when you're young and building good habits, nor do they even instantiate these habits. They allow junk food in schools, and most school lunches are carb-loaded, high-sugar, high-fat foods that keep kids depressed, unfocused, and unhealthy. They allow our children to exist in a fog where they don't tell them about the real consequences of living an unhealthy life. Most physical education, and all that I've been to, allows exceptions in exercise for weaker students. They don't push kids to be better, and more often than not, they leave kids with a negative overall impression on physicality and in a general sense, leaving them with an even more encouraged belief of being unable to do hard things. And the price of the economic game and how it's pushed so many people to homelessness and drug use. So let's say that we have a race. This is an analogy that I often use when people are like, oh, we need capitalism, just free markets, or no, we need socialism. So the trick is, life is like a race, okay? You don't want it to be too long to where most people can't make it to the finish line, but you don't want it to be too short where people don't even get any kind of purpose out of it. They don't get any kind of, it's not hard, it's not fulfilling, it's not anything. And most people just choose not even to run it. It's just, why would I even do that? I could just sit here and do nothing. So that's the race analogy. They don't see any point in trading your life for consumerism. A lot of people, these homeless peoples, these drug addicts, they don't see any point in trading their life for consumerism. They would rather, because they see it as a black and white thing. Either I work, make a middle class life so I can eat pizza every weekend and watch my big screen TV, or do I do what I'm already doing and continue to do nothing? So, traditional ways of living and meeting are dead. For example, I can't walk into the woods and start a village. Most people don't have relationships when they're young, and most don't have the income to support a family. Most people who do are spread thin and have to constrain the amount of children they have, and constrain the amount of time they have to support the kids. Many kids receive suboptimal parenting. This is due to time spent out of the home, stress, ignorance to proper parenting techniques, both parents not being on board with each other's way they want to raise a child, resulting in divisions and divorce. Most kids, especially nowadays, both parents are having to work. They go to daycare while both parents are working full-time jobs, and that's just so they can put food on the table and all of this, so the parents can finance their life. Which unfortunately, that's how most people treat money. They're financed up to their necks, and with no wiggle room, which force them to keep going to their jobs, which prevent any kind of entrepreneurship opportunities. And that's the way that we've kind of taught our kids about money. So, for example, rich people will pay for their kids to go to a nice public school where they'll learn about money, they'll learn about the value of, here we go. So entrepreneurship. Most successful parents put their kids in the private schools to teach the value of hard work and entrepreneurship. This is contradictory to what public schools teach kids. They remind you of college at every point and reinforce the belief that it's the only option to trade labor or unskilled employment. It's either college, trade labor, or unskilled employment. There is no third option. The third option is all the private schools are going to teach you, at least the good ones. That's all they're going to shove down your throat. They're going to say, make your own life, do what you want with your own thing, build something. That is not even an option in public school. You are trained to be a factory worker. You are trained to take assignments, go do set assignments, don't complain, work hard on it, and then present back. And they space these assignments out in a way that is very similar to full-time employment. So they're trying to work you up into this and get you ready for this employment system that we have now. So we are now 6 minutes away from the greatest debate in American history, and I am beyond excited for this. This is literally the Super Bowl. I watched Khabib fight McGregor, and both times, and this is way more exciting than that. So let me just talk a little bit about the things that I do in my life and about where America is as a civilization. So America as a civilization, as a people, have collectively traded responsibility for pleasure. We have pushed off the present into the future. We're all financed up to our necks. We're all indulging in constant pleasures, food, drinks, whatever gets us through. We work and then we cope. Work and then cope. So we're constantly either working or coping with the work that we are having to do. So, I decided at a very young age that I was not going to do this. In school, I would refuse assignments, like, for example, math assignments that would have you do pages upon pages of the same mathematical equation. And I would say, no, I know how to do this. You've seen that I know how to do this. I've demonstrated my knowledge of this. I am not going to, for the sake of your pleasure, I am not going to sit down here for 2 hours and pump out the same exact thing. You can go fuck yourself. So I would take that and I'd throw it in the trash. And they obviously didn't like this, and as you can imagine, I was put into an alternative school at a very young age. And being the smartest kid at an alternative school is not very fun, especially when all of your friends are doing drugs and such. You get pulled into a community. I smoked a lot of weed, and I tried to be kind of like the baddest of the bad kids, I guess you could say. And that did not bode very well for me, and I did not see a very good future in that. So eventually I turned 18, I got on my own, and I had to turn my life around. I was not going to go down the same path as other people. I either had these beliefs or I didn't. So I quit sugar, I quit weed, and I've been working out practically every day. Today's the first day I've taken off in like 4 days, and I've been working on getting to an everyday type situation. I am training for a race in Florida in not next year, but the year after. So 2022 in February, I'll be down in Florida racing the Spartan race, trying to get first place. So, yeah. I take cold showers. I don't take warm showers. Cold showers, they shock your immune system. They help your skin. It increases blood flow to the surface of your skin. It actually relieves muscle tension and muscle soreness. It's an exercise every day of doing something that you don't necessarily want to do. And I would say that overall, it's very beneficial for me. I think it's beneficial for my brain. It gets your and there's a lot of mixed science about this. I'm only going to say the stuff that's actually proven. It gets, chemicals like norepinephrine up, your stress chemicals, and it just gets these. I feel like it kind of stabilizes you. It's almost like working out. The benefits of working out every day, doing something very hard at the beginning of the day every day, kind of like readjusts you. It keeps you from. It keeps your sense of like how hard things are and how hard life is in general in check. So you're not constantly complaining about things and you ran 3 miles this morning. You're like, well, okay, I can do the dishes, for example. So we are now 3 minutes away from the greatest debate in American history. I'm gonna have to switch over to this in a moment. They're going to introduce the candidates. I did not think that they would have an audience today, considering COVID. It looks like they're kind of spaced apart, but it doesn't look like they're 6 feet apart. And these people are obviously in studios here. They're not wearing masks or anything. So that is interesting. It doesn't look like this person at the top of the stage is wearing a mask. Let me, full screen this so I can actually take a peek. It does not look like they're wearing a mask. It'd be very interesting if they had the candidates both wear masks. I do not think that is going to happen. I'm actually impressed that Biden's team even allowed Biden to debate today, to be honest with you. And I am very much looking forward to Trump absolutely tearing apart Biden in every sense of the word. So it looks like, is that Lester Holt? I don't think so. Oh, so the thing I wanted to say earlier. One of the people moderating today's debate is Fox News's, God, what's his name? Wallace. Anyway, he had like this Wallace show or whatever on Fox News. And when I was living at my dad's, I used to watch the news a lot. And I used to watch his show specifically. I thought that it was actually very insightful. I thought he was a decent guy. I liked him. And when I heard that he was moderating the debate tonight, I got pretty excited. We are 1 minute away. So I'm usually, Trump is attacked and torn apart by the moderators who were supposed to be in the middle and in the center. But obviously, the last couple of debates, that didn't happen. This guy just checked his watch, making sure that he doesn't run over his time. I believe it starts at exactly 9 or 9:01, maybe 9:05. I'm not 100% sure. Look, that guy's got a Keep America Great hat. I love it. That's Melania right there. Is that Jill? No, I don't even know what Jill Biden looks like, to be honest with you. Oh, she's a doctor. There's Ivanka. We are now at 9. I don't want to switch over to this because this lady's still talking, and this is definitely live right here. Let me just refresh the page. Hopefully it does not unmute itself, but, it's 2 seconds. So it is now 9 p.m. This presidential debate should be starting any moment now. They are probably switching Joe Biden's batteries out of his corpse and exoskeleton suit. All right, he's now walking off the stage. Any minute now, folks. Looks like people are starting to sit down, getting ready. So Kamala Harris. You can't really tell with the mask on. So here's another thing. I refuse to wear masks anywhere. I had the police called on me, and I just walked out. I was going to the ATM. I had to grab money for a buddy who had to pay for somebody to take him to work, and he was giving me money to go get the money and also bring him to work. So I was going to use the ATM. I walked in, and this guy starts yelling at me about my mask. And I said, I don't have one. And then started increasing the aggression towards me, yelling at me, pulling out a video camera. And this guy was the guy who was running the store to start. And he's like, get out of here. I'm calling the police. So I just sat there, pulled my money out of the ATM. The number didn't work because I was flustered, so I put my own number in when he gave me the number to put in. So then I put his number in, took the money out, and just walked out. And then I calmly said to him, like, hey, the license plate's back there if you want that too. And, he's like freaking out at me, taking a video of me, and I just drove off. Went to that same gas station today, and usually what I do is I just walk in, and if they tell me anything about my mask, I say, okay, whatever, and I plop the money in the counter, and I say this much on that pump. And they do it. Because, what are they going to do? The money's there. They're not going to, chase me out to give me my money back. But, anyway, yeah, Walmart, it's the same thing. They'll try to, at first, yell at you, and they'll chase you down sometimes. Most of the time, you just walk right past them, and then they'll yell at you on your way out and be like, you don't even care. Why are you such a jerk? And usually I'll respond to them and say, how are you sucking Janet Mills' dick with a mask on? Must be very hard for you. So, I believe it is a violation of my constitutional rights of travel and freedom, my freedom of speech, my freedom to fucking breathe, and, honestly, it's ludicrous. That small piece of cloth is not going to help you. They'll talk all about vapor barriers and say that, oh, well, because you're fogging up the inside of your mask, there's a vapor barrier that, captures all the coronavirus molecules, and they'll show you, coronavirus, the cells. And I'll show you a little demonstration of that and a little animation. In reality, it's not a barrier. It is not a force field of water. There are going to be holes in it, okay? There are going to be holes that aren't covered by water, and every single coronavirus cell is not going to get captured by that. And people will say, oh, well, masks are better than no masks. Sure, maybe by 0.0001%, but is that okay to then require everybody to wear a mask and present them with a $500 fee, which if I get, I will not pay. And if they try to take me to jail, I will go on a hunger strike. I will not eat for the entirety of my jail sentence. Not sure how that works. Not sure if they just let you starve to death or something, or if that'd be even possible. But, I will refuse. Anyway, I feel like it's starting. We're going to go to this guy who looks like Lester Holt here.
From the Health Education campus of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. I'm Chris Wallace of Fox News, and I welcome you to the first of the 2020 presidential debates between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. This debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The commission has designed the format, 6 roughly 15-minute segments, with 2-minute answers from each candidate to the first question, then open discussion for the rest of each segment. Both campaigns have agreed to these rules. For the record, I decided the topics and the questions in each topic. I can assure you, none of the questions has been shared with the commission or the 2 candidates. This debate is being conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the commission for all 4 debates. As a precaution, both campaigns have agreed the candidates will not shake hands at the beginning of tonight's debate. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, no boos or other interruptions, so we, and more importantly you, can focus on what the candidates have to say. No noise except right now, as we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump, and the Democratic nominee, Vice President Biden.
How you doing, man? How are you? I'm well.
Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court. President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight, why are you right to think a Justice Barrett would take the court? President Trump, in this first segment, you go first, 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris. I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all, top academic, good in every way, In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time, even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know. So I think that she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on that court. We really feel that. We have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, said she's the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time at a great school. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her. And very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is they'd try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you. Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this, and looking forward to this, Mr. President.
Thank you, Joe.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is. And that say occurs when they vote for a United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is, because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that, he ran on that, and he's been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And the justice, and I'm not opposed to the justice, she seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing that's on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They were able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do Democrat or Republican. Then he goes forward. If not, we should wait until February. All right.
There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say. Okay, Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
He's elected to the next
during
election.
that period of time, we have an opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years. And the 100 million people, Joe, the 100 million people is totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very
That's
happy
simply
with.
not true.
Well, you're certainly going to socialist. You're going to socialist medicine.
We're now into, gentlemen, we're now into open discussion.
Open discussion.
Open discussion. Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Vice President.
Number one, he knows that what I proposed. What I proposed is that we expand Obamacare and we increase it. We do not wipe any. And one of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
It's not what you've said,
But
and it's not what
that
your party
is-
has said.
that is simply
your party
a lie.
doesn't say it. Your
That
party
is
wants to
simple.
go socialist
My
medicine
party is
and
me.
socialist
right
healthcare.
now, I am
and
the
they're going to
Democratic
dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not according
Democratic
to
Party
Harris.
is what I, in fact, approved of. What I approved of. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, the 200,000 people that have died on his watch, how many of those have survived? Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act? And
Joe, you've had
pre-existing conditions?
308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide them proper health care in the military. So don't tell me
I'm
about
happy
this.
to talk about
And
this.
if you were here,
Look,
it
here's
wouldn't
the
be
deal.
200, it would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw. You
Late
didn't
on
want
the
me to
draw.
ban China, which was heavily infected. You didn't want me to ban
All right, gentlemen,
Europe, which
no,
was heavily
Mr. President,
You would have
Mr.
been much
President,
later, Joe.
Mr. President,
much later.
Mr. President,
You're talking about 2 million people.
You're
Mr.
not gonna be able
President,
to
as
shut
a
him up.
moderator, we are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but
Well,
go ahead.
Let me finish. The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is already
You don't know it's on the
begun.
ballot. Why is it on the ballot?
Because
Why is it
you
on the
said
ballot? It's not
you're-
on the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the
I
court.
don't think so.
In the court. Well,
There's nothing happening there.
Donald, would you
And
just
you don't
be quiet
know
for a
her view on Roe v. Wade. You
I
don't
don't
know her
know.
view.
Well, all right. Let's talk. We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of time. So, on health care, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
All right.
Mr. President, the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn
That's right.
Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan
Yes,
to
I have.
replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Well,
I got rid of the individual mandate.
I'm going to give you an
Excuse me.
opportunity.
I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a
That is
big
not a
chunk of
comprehensive
Obamacare. That
plan.
is absolutely a big thing. That was the
I
worst part of
didn't ask you,
Obamacare.
sir.
Chris,
You're
that was the
debating him,
worst
not
part of
me.
Obamacare.
Let me ask my question.
Well, I'll ask Joe. The individual mandate was the most unpopular aspect of Obamacare. I got rid of it.
I'd like
and
you
we
to,
will protect
Mr.
people
President,
with
I'm the
pre-existing
moderator of this
conditions.
debate, and I would like you to let me ask my question, and then you can answer your
ahead.
question. You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump health care plan?
Fine. Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something, that there's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against Big Pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care.
What about
All of the
pre-existing
things that
conditions?
we've done,
He has not cut
insulin. I
healthcare.
give you an example. Insulin. It was destroying families, destroying people. The cost. I'm getting it for so cheap. It's like water. You want to know the truth? So cheap. Take a look at all of the drugs what we're doing, prescription drug prices. We're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because
When in
they
fact-
pay just a tiny fraction.
As I say,
of
this
what
is
we do.
open discussion.
No,
Let
but
me
this
ask
is
you about,
big.
this
This
you'll be
is
happy,
big stuff.
sir. You'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the vice president, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare, and
Yes.
the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that that is going to end private insurance.
It is
and
not.
well, if I
sorry.
can ask you the question, it will end.
I'm going to turn on
It
my
will
mic for this
end
1
private
second. This is
insurance and
absolute
create
insanity
a government
already.
takeover of health care.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free in most states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would, Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option, number one.
Joe, you
Number
agreed
two.
with Bernie Sanders, who's far
did.
left, on the manifesto,
Well,
we
you-
call it.
well,
And that
manifest-
gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey,
Are you saying
I'm not
you
going
didn't
to
agree?
listen to him. The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders.
Not by much.
I beat him a whole hell of a lot. I'm
Not
here.
by
I'm here
much.
standing facing you, old buddy.
Pocahontas would have left
Well,
2 days
I tell
early.
you,
You would have lost every primary.
All he knows how to
on
do
Super
is hurt.
Tuesday. You got
Look,
very lucky.
here's the deal. I got very lucky. I'm going to get very lucky tonight as well. And tonight I'm going to
With
make
what?
sure, because
With what?
here's the deal. Here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just
agree.
want to
Hey,
make sure.
Joe, you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, not first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
No, he doesn't know how to do that. He has,
You'd be surprised.
you pick
You'd be surprised.
the
Go ahead,
wrong
Joe.
guy,
Talk,
the wrong
talk,
night
Joe.
at the wrong time.
Listen, you agreed with
Here's the
Bernie
deal.
Sanders to the
The
manifesto.
whole idea.
Now
let
you're
him-
disavowing it.
There is no manifesto, number
Please
one.
let him speak, Mr.
Number
President.
two.
You just lost the left.
Number two.
You just lost the left. You agreed with Bernie Sanders on a plan
folks,
that's absolutely
folks,
agreed
do you
to,
have any
and under that
idea
plan,
what
you have
this clown's
socialized,
doing?
They call it
Mr.
Medicare.
You have any do?
Socialized medicine.
Mr.
Well,
President.
I'll tell you what. He is not for any help for people needing health care. Because
Bernie?
because he in fact already has cost 10 million people their health care that they had from their employers because of his recession. Number one. Number two,
yeah.
there are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
No, I want to give
Number
them better
three.
health care at a much lower price
But-
because
and by the way,
Obamacare
he doesn't
is
know
no
how.
good.
He doesn't know how
I've
to do
already
that.
fixed it.
He has never
I've
offered
already
a
fixed
plan.
it to an extent.
He has never
Obamacare,
done a
as you
single
might
thing.
know, but probably don't. Obamacare
Gentlemen, you
is
realize
no
if you're
good,
both
Joe.
speaking at the
It's no
same
good,
time,
and it's too expensive.
let the president go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better, and I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guarantee pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is. And that destroyed, that they shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well or badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people, okay? I said, you got to run it so well.
That's what he's
And I
known for.
just had a meeting with them. They said, the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive.
I got you.
Premiums
I
are
got
too
it.
high, and
That's
it
what his
doesn't work.
people- that's what his people
we
said.
we do
No,
want to
no,
get
no.
rid of it.
It's
Chris,
an
we
open-
want to get rid of it.
I understand
and
it, sir,
something
but I
that's
have to
cheaper
give
and
you
better.
roughly equal time.
Good.
Please let the vice president talk.
Good.
He has no plan for health care. Of
course we do.
Please.
He sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has none, like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right.
He's
I
against
have one final question for you,
Sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how strongly you feel. Vote now.
Are you gonna pack the
Make
court?
sure you, in fact, let people know
He doesn't wanna
you're a
answer the
senator.
question.
I'm not going to answer the question
Why
because
would you answer that
because
question?
the question
you want to put a lot
is
of
the
new
question
Supreme Court
is
justice,
the
radical
question-
left.
Will you shut up, man?
Listen, who is on your list, Joe?
This
Who's
is
on your
so
list?
right.
Gentlemen, I think
this
we've
is
ended
so
this.
He's going to pack the court.
We have
I'm not going to give a list.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
They sure
47 years, you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is an awfully serious subject, so let's try to be serious about it. We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even after we produce a vaccine, experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and we were insisting that the Chinese, the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan. I laid out back in March exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools. It costs a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened to you.
You have 2 minutes, sir.
If we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000. And one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist, and he's xenophobic because you didn't think I should have closed our country. Wait a minute.
It says 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said, President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of your Democrat governors said, President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governors said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press, they give me bad press, because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you
done.
didn't do very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was
A
no
very-
economic recession.
Sir, you made a
There was,
far
there
less
was no
lethal
recession.
disease,
You made a
by the
point. Let him answer it.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he's shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them? You had a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far
How
more
many
people.
people?
Far
That is-
more people.
And,
you would have been
and by the way,
months late.
your own,
You were
his
months behind me,
his
Joe.
own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up. He said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine, we're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all, nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't
we
trust
Dr.
Johnson
Fauci.
& Johnson, Pfizer?
And
Okay,
by the way,
gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future, because you both have touched on two of the questions I'm going to ask. Focusing on the future first, President Trump, you have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words.
Yeah.
But Dr. Slaoui, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies, and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives. It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer. I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. Become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call them left, I don't know what I call
the
them.
head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Slaoui?
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available. Just like
He
Dr.
said it's a
Redfield.
possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also
I'm
be
talking about
after
when it's
that.
generally available, not when
well,
it will
we're
be.
going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up. Logistically, they're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be
This
delivering
is the
the
same
vaccine.
man
It's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
by Easter this would be gone away. By the warm weather, it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the same man.
That was said sarcastically,
That was
you
seen-
know that.
I-
that
I-
was said sarcastically.
And so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out, if we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up
You'll have
on
the
that.
vaccine
I
sooner
want to
than
pick
that.
up on this question, though. You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight. Your running mate, Senator Harris, goes further, saying the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying you
Everybody
can't, or
knows.
Senator
And-
Harris is saying you
no,
can't trust the scientists.
No, you can trust the scientists. She didn't say that. You can't trust
She said the public health
Did say
experts,
that.
quote, will be muzzled, will be
Yes.
suppressed.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But there's millions of scientists, there's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not. They're the people. And by
I
the way,
spoke to the
and
scientists that are in
Fauci,
charge.
By the way,
they will have
and
the vaccine very
does-
soon.
Let him finish.
Do you believe for a moment what he's telling you, in light of all the lies he's told you about the whole issue relating to COVID, he still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how dangerous it was going to be back in February, and he didn't even tell you. He's on record as saying it. He panicked or he just looked at the stock market, one of the two, because guess what? A lot of people died, and a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years, you've done nothing.
Let's have this debate.
And if you would have had, let me just tell you something, Joe.
No,
if you would have had the charge of what I was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again.
See,
and
We're
it's
going to
going
get
up
to the
fast.
economy in the next segment, sir.
Okay.
It's going up fast.
Okay.
Look forward to talking.
When it comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going to affect how the virus is handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to provide
Tell that
them
to Nancy
plastic.
Pelosi.
Well, he's just shush for a minute.
Tell it to Nancy Pelosi. And Schumer,
by the
Brian
way,
Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with the Senate. And he sits on his golf course. And I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably play more than I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact?
Well, he wants to shut down this country, and I want to keep it open. And we did a great thing by shutting it down. Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election on November 3rd.
I want to move on to another
because
subject.
it's a
I want to move
political
on to another
thing.
subject.
But those states are not doing well that are shut down right now.
Respond to that.
President Trump, you have begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
No, I think
the
masks
efficacy
are okay.
of
You have
masks?
to understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to. But I
Just
wear
like your
masks
rallies.
when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say this.
Vice President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. We provided money. The Congress.
But I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've also said
no serious person said the opposite.
Well, look at Dr. Fauci. Dr. Fauci said the opposite.
He did not say the opposite.
We got a little bit more than a minute left in this
masks
segment.
Are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said masks good. I'm okay with masks.
I want to ask you both about one last subject because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people. Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with...
Because nobody will show up.
People with...
Well, it's true. Nobody shows up to his rallies.
All right. In any case, why you holding the big rallies, why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
But are you
I've
not
done a
worried
great
about it
job
spreading
as a
disease?
president, and I'll have 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you
and
not worried
hangars,
about
and we
the
have a
disease
lot of
issue,
people.
sir?
Well, so far we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts. And we do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally on 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay. By the way, did you see
Yes, sir.
one of the last big rallies he had? And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. Put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. That's what he said. I can't. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another.
We've had no negative
cheek to
effect.
jowl. No negative effect.
We've had no negative effect. And we've had 35,000, 40,000
All right.
people
You want
at these rallies.
Just quickly finish up because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing masks, basically encouraged them not to.
All right.
He's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the
cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown.
Much faster.
In the second quarter, the unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy? President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2 million people would be dead now instead of still 204,000 people is too much. One person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening in some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week. You saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance. They can wash their hands. They can wear masks. They can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, and these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up. It's not fair. You're talking about almost it's like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well, setting records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right. Your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery. What's the difference?
The difference is millionaires and billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's his yeah, I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who've been putting themselves in the way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools, why aren't schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right. Your time is up, sir. We are going to get to...
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both had 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools, people want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives. They'll be careful, but they want their schools open. I'm the one that brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And
all right,
people of Ohio are very proud of me. And you know how I found out? When he took
gentlemen,
a phony
we're going to
ad.
get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers.
Show us your tax
I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax
1 year.
returns.
I went. You'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under-leveraged because the assets are extremely good, and we have a very, I built a great company.
I'm asking you a specific question, which is...
But let me tell you...
I understand all of that. I understand all of that. No, Mr. President,
Go ahead.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars,
So
yes.
not 750?
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to see it. But let me just tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build a building and we get tax credits, like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired right after that happened. But
Vice President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher makes on the money a school teacher makes is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And I'm going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't president. Because you weren't president screwing things up.
You were a senator. And
You're
by
the
way,
worst
you were
president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe. I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing, including fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of your vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be elected president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what is the analysis done by Wall Street firms. Points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make this federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company.
But respectfully, sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
By the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it before when you were vice president with Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That
That's
was
right.
your tax proposal.
I got it done. And you know what happened?
Yeah, you got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed.
The economy is
Mr.
busted.
President, Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
Not lower taxes for the American people.
But let me.
Excuse me.
But in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery since 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks. If you got in, if you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you'll lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave for other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't
booming.
Blew it.
He blew it.
It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since 1929.
Is it fair to say he blew it when fact, there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in the hole.
Excuse me,
one.
Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take. No, you were number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing. Part of my standard fare.
I'm the guy that brought back the automobile industry.
All right, let him.
We brought back. I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're going.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not
Many
true.
car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having
and they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit
China
with Mexico.
ate your lunch, down 18%. China ate your lunch, Joe. And no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars, to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
You've asked your question, let him answer.
None of that is true.
Oh, really? He didn't get $3.5 million?
Mr. President,
it's
Mr. President, please.
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
Well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice,
He got
Mr.
$3.5 million.
That is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr.
Oh.
President,
But,
it's an open discussion, please.
It's a fact.
Well,
It
you
is
have
not a
raised an
fact.
issue. Let the
It's been
Vice
totally
President answer.
discredited.
Did
There was a
Burisma pay him
report.
$183,000 a month with no experience in energy?
Mr.
Look,
President,
my son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he
and
did.
Mr.
the only
President,
guy that
let
did
him
something-
answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
who?
And
The media?
By everybody. Well, by the
By the
media,
media,
by our
because they refuse to
allies, by
talk
the
about it
World
because they're
Bank,
embarrassed.
by everyone has discredited. Matter
Dude,
of fact, even
Mr.
the people
President,
who
please stop.
testified under oath.
So let me
under
ask you
oath,
this,
under-
Joe.
under
No,
oath.
go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to
Even
you.
the people under.
He got $3.5 million from
testified-
Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh,
I
really?
did it
I'd like to know
honorably.
who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list
I'll
of the
fire
people who
them.
testified.
No, go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a
Some
good
because
job.
some people don't
well,
do a good
here's
job. With you,
Go
they
ahead.
say
You get
here's
the
the
wait a
deal.
minute. You get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me, this.
Hey,
this
let me just
person.
say, Joe.
No. I'm Mr. President. I'm
$3.5
Mr.
million,
President.
Joe.
That is simply
Why did
not
he
true.
deserve $3.5 million
It
from
did-
Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's
My
already.
family,
already
lost
wrote.
a fortune by coming down and helping
Go
us
ahead.
with
Go ahead,
government.
sir.
And that's such a.
they're right
Go
here.
ahead, Mr.
That's such
President.
a
Every
great.
single one of them lost
This
a
is not
fortune
about
President.
my
coming and
family or
helping
his
us with
family. It's
government.
about your family,
They
the
didn't
American
collect $3.5
people.
million
He
for
doesn't.
nothing.
That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
you
here.
should
All right,
Not
that's the end of the
Shouldn't have
segment.
taken the money.
We're moving on.
He didn't take them.
Well,
Vice
it's a very-
President,
but Chris,
no,
can I be honest? It's a very important
Try to be
question.
honest.
No,
That's
He
a good
stood
thing.
up.
No,
he stood up.
the answer to
and
the
he
question is
threatened
no.
Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion, if you don't
That
get rid of
is
the
absolutely
you know what, you're-
not
stop.
true.
You're on tape
You're-
doing it.
you're gonna
Not
have-
true.
Gentlemen, I hate to raise
Chris,
my voice,
he's
but I
on
see it seems
tape.
to be, why should I be different than the two of you? So here's the
Got a
deal.
good point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more
Oh,
interrupting
that's
than
all
he
right,
has.
but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less
there's
than,
plenty.
no, less than you have. Let's please continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for Black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the two of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president has ever said anything like that.
It is whose
Now,
minutes, sir.
second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is the savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African American community. So,
President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with racism?
He did a crime bill, 1994, where you call them super predators, African Americans, the super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Joe.
No, sir, it's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you a super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You call them super predators, and you've called them worse than that, because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals, total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day, and they put up their hands, and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left. And they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there is. There's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples. And when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to be held accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, to the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right.
What is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place,
that is not peaceful protest.
President Trump,
no, it's not, but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the issue of race. I promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody else.
Is radical,
and he would know.
What is radical about racial sensitivity training?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we were paying people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and frankly very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
Vice President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's the racist.
You just don't know.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about this than he does.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important to people know. They don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism in America.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson, you go to many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now.
Oh, my
but
Lord.
The reason is that
ridiculous.
the Democrats that run these cities don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
and you
crime,
still haven't mentioned.
Violent
Are you
crime.
in favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow it.
Are you in favor of law and order? Go
yes,
ahead.
I'm in favor.
You asked a question, let him finish.
Law and order.
Let him answer.
Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. Okay. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration.
All right.
It's gone up on his watch.
Went down much more in ours.
All right, we're now. Mr. President, you're going to. Mr. President,
every record in the
Mr.
book.
President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Places we had trouble were Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer, particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact, there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died, shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, we would have our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone, and you would see problems like you've never seen.
He wouldn't know a suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not.
So much
Go ahead. Wait a minute.
I was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles on racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and/or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means.
Let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, the only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what they're talking about. He's talking about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law support.
Look,
he has no law enforcement
that's not
support.
true.
Almost
that's
nothing.
Look.
Oh, really? Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead.
Look,
think. We have time.
We don't have time to do anything.
Think
All right.
about it.
Folks,
Name one law enforcement group that came out and supported
gentlemen,
you.
I think I'm going to take back the
There
moderator's
aren't. I don't
role,
think there are any.
and I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is, as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted, and anyone who commits it.
But
should
you've
be
never called for the people, the leader. Excuse me, sir. You have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
Really? Here's the thing.
I sent in the U.S. Marshals to get the killer of the young man in the middle of the street. They shot him, and for 3 days,
President Trump,
Portland wouldn't do anything. I had to send in the U.S. Marshals. They took care of business.
Go ahead, sir.
And by the way, his own former spokesperson said, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that. And so here's the But here's the point. The point is that that's what he keeps trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly, and every single solitary time.
Okay, and to button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly criticized.
I have to answer his statement.
No, you have
his
repeatedly.
Wait,
you have
just 1 second.
No, you've been talking back
You made
and
a
forth.
statement.
I'm asking you.
I would love to end it.
Sir.
I would love to end it.
If you want to switch seats,
we would very quickly.
We can do that, but
I'd send in the National Guard. It would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay,
but they don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
are you
I'm
prepared
willing to do
specifically
that, but
do it?
Well, go ahead, sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right wing.
So what are you saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see peace.
Then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
Do you want to call him? What do you want to call them? Give me a name. Give me a
white
name.
Supremacists and
who would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem.
His
This
own
is a left-wing.
FBI director
This
said
is a
the threat
left-wing
of
problem.
white supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you gotta be
not
kidding.
militia. That's what
All right,
his
it's an idea.
FBI. His
Okay.
FBI director
Gentlemen,
said.
Well,
we're
then
gonna,
you know what?
No,
He's
no,
wrong.
we're done, sir. We're moving
Everybody-
on to the next.
everybody
We're
gives
moving.
you
When a bat
advice
hits
in
you
your
over the head, that's
administration.
not an idea.
Everybody in
Antifa
your
is
administration
bad.
tells you the truth has a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas. that are
Antifa is a dangerous,
All right,
radical
gentlemen,
group.
we're now moving on to the Trump
And
and
you ought to be
Biden
careful with
records.
them. They'll overthrow you.
When
in
a
2
president,
seconds.
I'm going to ask a question. When the president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the Almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the impeachment hoax. And you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fixing of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper health care. It was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court justices. That is a record, the likes of which very few people, and you know one of the reasons I'll have so many judges? Because President Obama and him left me 128 judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like, you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president, you can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term. 300 judges, it's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused the recession. With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head-to-head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got $3.5 million.
And by the way, my son...
Wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word.
No, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you
Go
add
ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yeah,
Because-
yes,
okay.
you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot, and the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent.
Are you talking
like
about
hell.
Hunter? Are you talking about
I'm talking about my son, Bo Biden. You're talking about.
I don't know Bo. I know Hunter.
Yeah,
Hunter
you know
got
Bo.
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. He
For
wasn't dishonorably
cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. And once you
None
became
of that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
He
My
made
son,
a fortune.
My son,
and he didn't have a job.
My son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it, and I'm proud of him.
But why was he
proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All
of
right, but
dollars?
he wasn't given
All right,
tens of
he was
millions of
given
dollars.
tens
That is
of
totally,
millions of
that's been
dollars.
totally discredited.
We've already been
totally discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial
So do I.
subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a
I know, but
judgment
when
call
somebody
here.
gets $3.5 million
Okay,
from the
Let's
mayor
talk about
of Moscow,
Let's talk
That is
about
not true.
Gentlemen,
that report is totally
Why did he get
discredited.
it?
I
Mitt
think-
Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money, that report. It was written for political reasons.
You know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful, clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else. The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management.
What do you
You've got to have
believe?
cuts.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very
Do you
exciting
believe
for a lot of people.
that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of
I
this
think
planet?
a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they have forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, you know, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground. That's burning down because of a lack of
But,
management.
sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants? Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars
Well,
and
not
trucks?
really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference. And then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer. It would be much cheaper by
But in the case of
$3,500.
California, they've simply
No, but you
ignored
would take
your
a lot of cars
rollback.
off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me, many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And, and I'm okay with electric cars, too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that, in fact, is going to provide for the ability us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they, in fact, are weatherized in a way that, in fact, they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that, in fact, is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion and say, here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, makes sure that he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says that, well, the fact is, it's all true. And here's the deal.
He's talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip down buildings
and
rebuild the building.
No,
it's the dumbest, most ridiculous. Where airplanes are out of business, where two-car systems are out, where they want to take out the cows too. That's not true either, right? This is a $100 trillion.
Look,
that's more money than our country could make in 100 years if we're
not
going to
the case.
All right, let me
destroy our
because I
country.
actually wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy-efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good-paying jobs.
Let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that.
$100 billion.
The fact is, it's going to create millions of good-paying jobs, and these tax incentives for people to weatherize, which he wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that.
That's
at all.
He did say.
You made it up.
And here's the deal.
You make up.
We are going to be in a position where we can create hard hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars now, billions of dollars on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. They didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. We, in fact, but the rest of the world, we've got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen.
Wait a minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does. India does. They all do. We're supposed to be good. And by the way, he made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is
not
not
$20
my
billion.
plan.
That's
the Green
well,
New
you want to
Deal
rebuild every
is
building.
not my plan.
You want to rebuild every.
If he knew anything about, if he knew anything
he made a
about,
statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
That is
what
not
he
true.
did
Sir,
is he
you're done
said
in this segment.
he called the military
Mr. Vice President,
stupid bastards.
I
and he
did
said
not
it on
say
tape.
that.
He said
Mr.
stupid
Please,
bastards. He
sir,
said it.
stop.
I would never
I
say
would
that
play
to the
it.
military.
Play it.
Go ahead.
You're
Mr.
on
Vice
tape.
President answered his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all his rantings.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental
Green New
changes
Deal,
will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. We're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
So do you
We're going to
support
build
the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
Do you support that?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
You don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I
That
support
means you
the
just lost the radical left.
I
Oh,
support
you
the
don't.
Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment, election integrity. As we meet tonight, millions of Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election, and what are you prepared to do over the next 5+ weeks, because it'll not only be to Election Day, but also counting some ballots, mail-in ballots after Election Day. What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
Prepared to let people vote. They should go to iwillvote.com, decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not, when the votes are counted, and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, that'll be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine what this country is going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change, or you get 4 more years of these lies?
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, There was no transition because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that because we caught you in a sense. And President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after the election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by Democrats.
2 minutes is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump,
it's a rigged election.
you're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so. Because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them, we don't like them.
But what
they
are you
throw
going to
them
do
out
about
left
it? There
and
are
right.
millions of ballots going out right now.
What you do is you go and vote. You do a solicited ballot, and that's okay, or you go and vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people...
You go and vote. You go and vote.
But
like
what I'm
they,
saying is,
like they used to in the old...
Millions of people...
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending... They have mailmen with lots of it. Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia, mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well.
There is no evidence
This is
of that.
not going to end well.
5 states have had mail-in ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by election day. If it doesn't get in till the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because
You're wrong. You're wrong.
I want to continue with you on this, Vice President Biden.
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes a statement like that.
Excuse me. Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court with a Justice Barrett will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court would settle this because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you. That is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me, Chris, when you have 80 million ballots,
gentlemen, I have a final
Senate
question.
and swamping the system, you know it can't be done. You know it can't, and already
All
there's
right.
been
So now,
fraud. mail
service
delivers
wait a minute, gentlemen. And the final question is: in 8 states, we can keep talking. In 8 states, election workers are prohibited currently by law. 8 states from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and flatten them until Election Day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
could be months,
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the vice president, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest? And will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you go first.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They were called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what,
does that mean,
from a common sense,
does that mean you're going to tell your people to take to the street?
It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
you think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes, and here's the deal. We count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until Election Day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why was it not? Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots, that somehow it's a fraudulent process. It's already been established. Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race.
I asked you had an opportunity to respond.
Carolyn Maloney.
Go ahead.
They have no idea what happened.
Vice President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome. And I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy, I want to see an honest ballot count.
Gentlemen, you say that's the end of it? This is the end of this debate?
Honest ballot count.
We're going to leave it there. To be continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, it's been an interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for participating in the first of 3 debates that you have agreed to engage in. We want to thank Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic for hosting this event. The next debate, sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates, will be 1 week from tomorrow, October 7th, at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. The 2 vice presidential nominees, Vice President Mike Pence and Senator Kamala Harris, will debate at 9 p.m. Eastern that night. We hope you watch. Until then, thank you and good night. Thank you.
Interruption.
So, well, that was very interesting. That Trump definitely should not have interrupted Biden so much. Otherwise, it didn't really seem like he was hitting on a lot of things that he could have hit on. Like, he could have slammed Biden on a lot that he didn't actually. He could have slammed him on the fact that he refused to take a drug test. Biden was actually very put together today, which is super surprising because He's usually falling apart at the seams in most of his conversations. He stays out of the light as much as possible. But yeah, Trump came off a little bit too unhinged today. I think he was expecting to really just tear apart Biden. I think he should push this test a lot more. He should be pushing the drug test, especially over the next 3 days. But man, like, that was pretty crazy. I don't have much to say about that. I'm gonna wake up at 5 a.m. tomorrow and go for a run, think about it, and then probably make another video sometime soon. I'm definitely gonna have to keep doing this because there's a lot of fucked up shit going on in our country right now, and it has to stop. And people have to fucking stand up and figure out what's going on and do something about it because, like, as you can see, like, Trump could have hammered Biden on a lot of stuff, and he didn't. So, I mean, Trump is still our best option by far, but America is dying. America is not the country it used to be anymore, and we have to, as a people, stand up and figure out what it is we want for ourselves. So, and I'm sure it's not this, what we saw tonight, on either side. So, also, I'm seeing a lot of stuff on Twitter right now about Trump refusing to condemn white supremacists. When he said that he'd condemned the Proud Boys and such, and the Proud Boys aren't even a white supremacist group, so I don't even know what people are talking about with that. The Proud Boys is literally just a group talking about how it's good to be a man. So, anybody who says the Proud Boys is a white supremacist group can go fuck themselves. And they might as well say that Antifa is white supremacist as well. So, with that, good fucking night.